Welcome to the Portal Library. Step through and let the magic begin. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you'd love more stories or have a request. New videos uploaded every Friday.
Thoughts and Desires, BL Short Story.
Adrian loved packing for trips almost as much as he loved the trips themselves. His apartment was quiet, except for music humming softly from a speaker, something smooth, rhythmic, a little indulgent. Morning light spilled through tall windows, catching on the gold chain at his collarbone as he stood in front of his open suitcase. He had options. Too many, if he was honest. Adrian lifted a linen shirt from the bed, held it up, then tossed it aside in favor of another, darker, sharper, cut just tight enough through the shoulders. He dressed with intention, always had. Clothes weren't just fabric to him. They were language, mood, invitation. The cruise wasn't just a vacation. It was a stage. This year, his department had won the company raffle. Design and IT paired together for a week-long retreat cruise that was supposed to encourage cross-department synergy. Adrian had laughed when the email came through, already imagining the awkward icebreakers and forced mixers. Still, he'd entered the raffle on purpose, because IT didn't usually mix with design, and because there was someone in IT he'd noticed months ago. Adrian zipped the suitcase halfway, then paused, leaning back against the bed. He wasn't shy about attraction. He never had been. Pansexual, open, comfortable in his skin, desire wasn't something he hid or apologized for. But he was also careful, professional. He understood the unspoken rules of proximity and power, of not making someone uncomfortable just because he could. And yet, there was something about the IT guy. Quiet, observant, not trying to be anything. Adrian had caught glimpses, flannel shirts, worn sneakers, a kind of focused stillness that made people fade into the background around him. They'd never spoken beyond polite greetings, never shared a real conversation. But Adrian had noticed the way his shoulders filled doorways, the way his eyes lingered on details others missed. And now, they'd be on a ship together. He exhaled slowly, lips curving into a faint smile. At the office later that day, the design floor buzzed with energy. People hovered around Adrian's desk under the excuse of work questions that weren't really about work. Someone joked about him needing extra luggage for all his outfits. Another teased him about celebrities he'd dressed last season. Adrian took it all in stride, warm and easy, answering questions while sending off last-minute files. He was used to the attention. Success did that. Visibility, too. Still, his attention drifted, not to the crowd around him, but past them, toward the elevators, toward the floor IT worked on. He checked his phone again, no new notifications, not that he was expecting any. The cruise would start tomorrow. Adrian shut down his computer, slung his bag over one shoulder, and took one last look around the studio. Mood boards, fabric swatches, half-finished designs that would still be waiting when he got back. A pause before movement. He felt it then. Not magic, not fate, just anticipation. The kind that sat low in the body, the kind that made something warm stir behind the ribs. Adrian stepped into the elevator, already thinking about ocean air, night decks, and the possibility that this trip might be more interesting than anyone realized.
Leo found out about the cruise because someone in accounting shouted it across the office. He hadn't even checked his email yet. He paused mid-sip of burnt coffee, fingers hovering over his keyboard, and listened as the excitement rippled through the floor. Laughter, disbelief, someone swearing they'd never win anything in their life and finally had. A free cruise. Leo blinked once, then turned back to his monitor. He wasn't against vacations, he just wasn't the type to plan them. Cruises especially felt like something other people did. Couples, families, people who liked schedules disguised as fun. But free was free. And when he finally opened the email, scanning past the corporate language about team cohesion and interdepartmental bonding, the words that stuck were open bar. That he could work with. The IT department reacted the way it always did. Subdued excitement, practical questions, jokes delivered under people's breath instead of shouted across the room. Someone asked if Wi-Fi would be reliable. Someone else immediately started calculating PTO logistics. Leo stayed mostly quiet, nodding along when spoken to, offering a half smile when someone joked about seasickness. He didn't mind people, he just didn't chase them. At 33, Leo's life had settled into something comfortable and predictable. Work, home, her rotation of hobbies he picked up and put down without much ceremony. He liked things that worked the way they were supposed to. Relationships hadn't really fit into that equation for a while. The last person he'd dated seriously had been an undergrad, a girl he'd liked, respected, thought he was supposed to want. They drifted apart without drama, without betrayal, just quiet realization. Since then, dating had felt more like an obligation than a desire. Leo didn't miss it. At least he hadn't. He shut down his computer later that evening, rolling his shoulders as he stood. Around him, the office emptied out in its usual orderly way. No lingering conversations, no dramatic goodbyes. At home, packing took less than 20 minutes. Leo tossed clothes into his suitcase with minimal thought. Flannel shirts, a couple of Hawaiian shirts someone had once bought him as a joke, comfortable shoes. He stared at the open suitcase for a moment, then shrugged and added swim trunks he wasn't sure he'd use. He checked the cruise itinerary once, mostly to confirm the bar schedule. That was enough. As he zipped the suitcase shut, Leo felt something unfamiliar brush against his awareness. Not excitement, exactly, more like curiosity. A break from routine, a change of scenery. A week where nothing was required of him except showing up. He didn't know anyone in design well, didn't have a reason to. The cruise to him was just a pause, a quiet one. Leo turned off the lights, already planning which nights he'd nurse a drink and which ones he'd disappear back to his cabin early, completely unaware that this trip was about to wake something he hadn't thought about in years.
I boarded the ship thinking about logistics, where to put my bag, how long before the bar opened, whether the Wi-Fi would be decent enough that I wouldn't regret bringing my laptop. The deck was crowded, loud in that way only vacations manage to be, laughter too sharp, voices overlapping, people already acting like they were freer than they'd been an hour ago. I adjusted the strap of my backpack and stepped aside, instinctively finding space near the railing. The ocean stretched out in front of me, flat and wide, the kind of view that is mesmerizing to look at. Just water, horizon, movement. I let my shoulders drop a little as I watched the dock crew unhook the lines. That was when someone passed close behind me, close enough that I noticed the shift in air, the brush of movement just inside my personal space. I turned without really thinking. He was already a step past me. Tall, broad shoulders, leaned muscles built like a sculpture that captivates the room. Dark skin, locks pulled back neatly, sunglasses on. Everything about him looked deliberate, like he'd dressed that morning with a purpose beyond whatever was clean. Someone like him probably worked in design. I was sure of it. I would have remembered him if he'd been IT. He hadn't stopped, hadn't stared, just glanced, quick, assessing. But his eyes held mine for a beat longer than necessary. Something tightened low in my stomach. Not nerves, not panic, just that sudden, unwanted awareness that I'd been clocked, noticed in return. I looked away first. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People looked at each other all the time, especially on trips like this, where everyone was pretending to be a little looser, a little bolder than usual. Still, when I shifted my weight, I realized my shoulders hadn't fully relaxed again. I headed for the bar once I spotted it open, weaving through clusters of coworkers. The place smelled like citrus and sunscreen and fresh paint, new rules and new expectations. He was already there. Standing slightly to the side of the counter, one elbow resting casually against it, drink in hand. Not hovering, not crowding, just existing like he belonged there. The glass was clear, something light-colored, with ice and a garnish, subtle and not too flashy. I ordered a beer, no hesitation, familiar territory. The bartender slid it toward me. I took a sip right away. Cold, sharp, exactly what I wanted.
Free alcohol really does wonders for morale, wouldn't you agree?
I glanced sideways. He was standing so close. My breath caught in my throat. I started breathing a little heavier. I could see the faint line between his brows when he focused, the way his shirt hugged his chest and arms, fitted closely enough that it tracked the shape of muscle underneath, not stretched, just precise, like it had been cut for him instead of bought off a rack. "Wouldn't be here otherwise," I said with a strangled chuckle. "Smooth, Leo, so smooth." He smiled slightly, like I just confirmed something obvious. "Fair." A pause settled between us, not awkward, just peaceful.
I'm Adrian from the design team.
He held out his hand, relaxed, confident without pushing. "Leo, IT." We shook. His grip was warm, solid, brief, but my hand remembered it longer than necessary after he let go. The ship horn sounded then, low and heavy, vibrating through the deck. I felt it through the soles of my shoes more than I heard it. The dock began to slide away, the city pulling back inch by inch. I leaned forward against the railing without realizing it until he did the same. We stood there side by side, watching the water churn as the ship moved, neither of us saying anything else. No pressure to fill the space, no rush. I told myself it was just proximity, just coincidence, but my body didn't buy that. It logged the details quietly, the heat at my side, the way his presence filled the space, his smell, the fact that I didn't feel the urge to step away. Oh God, I am so thirsty. This is a work retreat, Leo, a work retreat. Get a grip. I repeated to myself over and over again. A small smile tugged on the side of his lips while he looked at me with mischief and amusement. Oh, I am so fucked.
I should have known something was off when I couldn't stop noticing him. Not in a dramatic way, just consistently. The first team activity was something harmless, supposedly. Some kind of water relay that involved inflatable obstacles, slippery platforms, and far too much skin for coworkers who were supposed to go back to work and see each other there. I told myself to stay on the edge of it, cheer politely, avoid situations where people expected me to participate. That lasted about 5 minutes. Someone shoved a life vest into my hands. Someone else laughed and said my name like it was a challenge, and before I could come up with a reasonable excuse, I was climbing up onto a slick platform with seawater spraying my calves. Adrian was already there, because of course he was. Shirt gone, swim shorts sitting low on his hips, skin warm from the sun, muscles moving when he shifted his weight. Just goddamn perfect. Real, functional, distracting. Yep, I am officially losing it on day 2. Wonderful. I looked anywhere but directly at him. We repaired together without discussion. I didn't even hear who made the call. One moment I was standing alone, the next he was next to me, close enough that his arm brushed mine when the platform rocked. Skin to skin. I sucked in a sharp breath before I could stop myself. Sorry, he said automatically, steadying himself with one hand against my back. His palm landed just above my hip, fingers splayed, not grabbing, not lingering, not even a little bit. But it stayed there for half a second too long. My brain stalled. The whistle blew. Someone shouted. Water splashed up around us. His hand dropped. I told myself to move, to focus, to do something. Instead, I became acutely aware of everything. The heat of the sun, the wet fabric clinging to my thighs, the exact spot where his hand had been. We made it through the course with awkward efficiency. A few more accidental brushes. A shoulder bump. His knee knocking against mine when we both slipped at the same time. Every touch sent the same reaction through me. Tight, low, immediate. By the time it was over, my pulse was loud in my ears. I avoided looking at him for the rest of the afternoon. That night, I crashed early. I told myself it was the sun, the activity, the alcohol I'd had with dinner. Normal reasons to be exhausted. And then the dream started. The dream didn't feel normal, because of course it wouldn't. It started vague. Heat, movement, pressure. Then sharp and fast. Adrian's hands. His mouth. The weight of him close enough that I could feel his breath against my neck. Fingers dragging slowly along my sides like he was mapping me out, deliberate and unhurried. I woke up with my heart racing and my sheets twisted around my legs. And a very obvious problem. I stared at the ceiling, breathing hard, face burning even though no one could see me. What the fuck? I muttered to the dark. I showered longer than necessary the next morning. The second day was worse. More activities, less clothing, more reasons for accidental contact. There was a water dodgeball game that involved diving and scrambling and bodies colliding without apology. At one point, Adrian caught me by the wrist to keep me from slipping. His thumb pressed into the inside of my wrist. A pulse jumped there. He felt it. I knew he did. He let go quickly. Gotcha, he said, all casually, with a normal voice. I nodded too fast and pulled away like the deck had suddenly become unstable. I took a nap that afternoon. I still dreamed. This time it wasn't vague at all. I woke up panting, sheets damp, thighs tight together like my body was trying to trap the sensation before it faded. I sat on the edge of the bed, head in my hands. This was getting ridiculous. That evening, the drinks flowed easier, louder, the lighting low and forgiving. I was halfway through my second drink when it happened. Not a sound, not a voice. A thought. Clear. Male. Absolutely not mine. Jesus, he looks good like that. I choked on my drink. Coughed hard enough that someone patted my back. I waved them off, heart slamming against my ribs. No one around me reacted. Adrian was across the table, laughing at something someone else said, completely unbothered. My stomach flipped. Don't stare. The thought continued, uninvited and intimate. You're gonna make it obvious. I froze. That wasn't my voice. My hands were shaking. I lifted my glass, took a sip I didn't need, eyes flicking up despite myself. Adrian's gaze met mine. And this time he smiled. Slow, knowing, amused. I looked away immediately. Oh God. Oh God. I didn't sleep much that night. By the third morning, I couldn't meet his eyes without my pulse jumping and my thoughts scattering. My body reacted before my brain could keep up. Heat, awareness, the constant sense that I was being observed from the inside out. This was not sustainable. This was not professional. This was absolutely not something I was prepared to deal with on a company retreat cruise. And yet, when he asked me again later that morning, fingers grazing the back of my neck, light and accidental and devastating. My breath caught, and I knew this wasn't going to stop on its own.
By the third night, it wasn't subtle anymore. I couldn't sit across from him without it happening. Not whispers, not fragments, but full sentences. Images that landed fully formed in my head, uninvited and unapologetic. Things like, I could bend him over that table. And every time, I nearly dropped my drink. My hand tightened around the glass so hard my knuckles went white. The table between us was narrow, cluttered with empty plates and salt shakers, and someone's forgotten phone, completely ordinary, was suddenly unusable. I shifted in my seat, thighs pressing together instinctively. Heat pooled low and heavy, impossible to ignore now. My pulse thudded loud enough that I was convinced someone else could hear it. I looked up. Big mistake. Adrian was already watching me, openly staring, like he'd felt the exact moment the thought landed. His mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Something quieter. Something dangerous.
Jesus.
His voice slid into my head, smooth and slow.
You're really trying not to think about it, aren't you?
I sucked in a breath through my nose, jaw clenched so tight it ached. This had stopped being funny, stopped being confusing. This was torture. I pushed back from the table abruptly, chair scraping the floor. Heads turned. Someone laughed, asked if I was good. Bathroom, I muttered, already moving. I didn't make it far. His hand closed around my wrist just outside the dining area, fingers firm but not forceful. Enough to stop me, enough to ground me. I turned on him, heart racing, words spilling before I could second-guess myself. Okay, no, I can't. I dragged a hand through my hair, breathing hard. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep hearing what you want to do to me like I'm 16 and hiding under my sheets. His expression softened. Concern flickered there, real, immediate.
I didn't mean to.
I know, I cut in. I know you didn't. But it's in my head now, all the time, and I'm tired of pretending I don't want it. The air between us felt charged, like the second before something breaks. I swallowed. Fuck it, I said quietly. If you want me, then want me. Out loud. Silence stretched. Then gently, are you sure? That did it. Something in my chest loosened. The pressure cracked. I nodded once, decisive. I don't want to think about it anymore, I said. I want to choose it. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, the same spot as the day before, and this time he didn't pull away.
Okay,
He said softly. That night blurred at the edges. Not in details, in feeling. Laughter, heat, the sense of stepping off a ledge and not hitting the ground. I remember the way the world narrowed to just us. No departments, no coworkers, no future consequences hovering over my shoulder. Just the certainty that I'd made a decision and the relief that came with it. That night didn't feel rushed. It felt overdue. There was a moment, quiet, unremarkable on the outside, where his hands were on me and I realized how much of my life I'd been holding myself back without even noticing. How many sensations I'd ignored. how much pleasure I'd convinced myself I didn't need. Being with him wasn't explosive. It was grounding, intentional, like being claimed without force, like my body finally being spoken to in a language it had been waiting for. I didn't disappear into it. I arrived. And once I did, I knew I wasn't the same person who'd boarded this ship thinking about Wi-Fi and logistics. The cruise didn't magically become less unhinged after that. If anything, it got better. Wilder, louder, easier. I knew Monday would come. I knew offices and meetings and carefully neutral eye contact would follow. That was future Leo's problem. Right now, I leaned back against the railing, night air cool against my skin, his presence warm at my side. Best team bonding experience of my life. Zero regrets.
Quote of the week. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. Audre Lorde. Thank you for listening to Thoughts and Desires, a BL short story. Hope you enjoyed this story. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you'd love more stories or have a request. New videos uploaded every Friday.